We met this morning with some brokers, had a broker breakfast, and we talked for 45 minutes or so about the market, and I warned them that I was going to be talking about that at the beginning of this session. So for those of you who were at the broker get together a little bit earlier, this will be in some parts repetitive, but there is a bigger story to tell here. What I'm finding, you know, as I talk to people about what's going on these days, I hear the same story, and I read the newspaper like you do, and I hear the news. And there was an article, if anybody here, the hotel I stayed in had USA Today. And right there on the front page of the business section of USA Today is an article about the housing market. And it says what I've been seeing pretty consistently over the last few months, that prices are showing moderate increases. In some markets they're more dramatic than others. That the number of foreclosures has leveled off, or at least it's not the same kind of problem that we had seen during the years of the collapse, you know, the leveling off in 6 and then the decline in 7 and the collapse in 8 and 9 and 10. But what is also out there about the market that you need to know in working with buyers, but it's also very useful for you in seeking listings, is that the market has made what I consider to be a historic change. We see markets fall, we see markets rise, but I've never seen the housing market do what it's doing now. And I thought I'd just point out what I see happening and the opportunities and potential problems that it can create. I think the housing market has bifurcated, and I think it's about to do it again. You're about to see what I consider to be a very interesting change. But first, let me just tell you about the change that we've already seen. Now, you will see publications say that the housing market has bottomed, and now we're seeing growth in the housing market again. And you'll hear people talk about multiple offers for the first time, and over these last few months for the first time in several years. And that if you can get your seller to be halfway reasonable, you can expect to have more than one offer on a property and prices are appreciated. Well, this is no doubt true. But what you've got to keep in mind is that this is true for a part of the market, but is most definitely not true for a huge part of the market. And when that part of the market changes, it's going to affect what's happening in this other tier. So when I say bifurcating, splitting, I'm not talking about in terms of price. That has relatively little to do with it. There will always be differences in time on market, or the time it takes to sell houses priced in a certain price level, than it does for houses at a different price level. We all know that 100 to 200 is going to go more briskly than 8 to 9. That's just the way the market is. There are more more buyers interested in those properties. Easier to get the financing and so on. I'm not talking about price here when I say there's been a split. What I'm talking about is a 3-part market, 2 parts of which are combined but are about to split, and 1 part that is independent of these other 2 parts. So what are the 3 parts? Well, you know what the 3 parts are. We have at one level REO. All right? Now that is a substantial amount of the market, but you aren't seeing it. But you soon will begin to see it. But you're going to see it in a way that's going to be a little bit surprising. Excuse me. You remember that in the fall of 2010, in a courtroom down in Florida, a bombshell went off when an attorney in that state, which is a judicial foreclosure state, simply asked of an officer of the lender, did you follow the statute regarding the certification that each of the steps in the foreclosure had been done? And the answer was, no, somebody in my outfit did, but it wasn't the person that the statute said needed to do it. And from that moment on, you know what happened. the so-called robo-signing. Now, robo-signing was just a term applied to the fact that people other than those who were required by statutes to verify and make certifications as to the foreclosure had been doing it. All right? It's important to note that there was not a serious problem in terms of people not delinquent in their mortgages getting foreclosed on. That was no more prevalent than it ever has been. There'll always be some of that, but that wasn't the issue here. It was the procedures. And I won't bore you with all the details about why that brings us square into the face of a reality that is a pretty unpleasant reality. That we live in a time where the technological revolution has firmly taken hold. But our statutes regarding the recordations of documents and notices that we get in the land records and procedures for foreclosure are antiquated. To say antiquated doesn't even do it justice. All right, they are medieval practically. Be that as it may, what we know is that this brought foreclosures to a halt, at least in half the country where these procedures were judicial in nature. Judicial foreclosures just ground to a halt. But even in those parts of the country where trustee sales are the rule, about half the country, and Virginia's in that category, foreclosures greatly slowed down because in many cases the same kinds of procedures were being used in to expedite the foreclosure that were used in states where you had to go to court to finalize it. So what we saw was a dramatic decline in the number of foreclosures from the fall of 2010 to this time. And so we have an interesting phenomenon. If we weren't aware of this so-called robo-signing issue, we would think that foreclosures had been on the decline and that was pretty good for the market. But what was happening in reality? In reality, we were building a shadow inventory of properties that were held by the banks already, some 2 to 3 million. But they were not foreclosing on because they had problems. Another part of the shadow inventory was properties that were sold in foreclosure, but there was a title issue relating to whether the title had been properly cleared through the foreclosure process. And then you had a third part of this shadow inventory, which was the growing number of people who were delinquent in their mortgages, but the banks had stopped the foreclosure process because of this issue until it got resolved. A lawsuit resulted that the final number was $25 billion in damages were sought against the biggest banks because of these improprieties in the foreclosure world. Now, the plaintiffs in this were state attorneys general, consumer groups, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, Federal Housing Administration, the conservator for Fannie and Freddie. Everybody under the sun was suing these banks. And the banks held firm. They said $25 billion is robbery. There has been no effective damage to anybody. We didn't do it right, but we didn't do anything that hurt anybody. Well, that doesn't fly, especially when consumer protection and very sympathetic plaintiffs are involved, people who've lost their homes. Ultimately, that lawsuit now has been settled. It was settled this spring. And in the afternoon, when I do my legal update, I'm going to talk more detail about what that settlement entailed and what's going to come out of it. But for now, let me just say this, that shadow inventory is now going to liberate. The banks are putting the procedures in place to resume what they were doing, but they're not going to be resuming it in the same way. Now, what is the quantity of this shadow inventory? It is enormous. Estimates vary. It's hard to get an accurate count on all these things, but it's something in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 million homes that are in this shadow inventory. And the shadow inventory is one of the reasons that you've seen the market have a hard time finding a bottom. Because as long as buyers know that at some point millions of houses of a distressed nature are going to come back on the market, they can see what the likely price effect of this REO and soon-to-be REO property coming on the market is going to have on the price of the properties that they buy. Lenders see the same thing, one of the reasons that they have toughened lending standards. They don't believe that the bottom has really come into view. Well, this shadow inventory has been one of the biggest overhangs on the market. and it is still there. But the way the lawsuit was settled does something to create another split in this shadow inventory. You'll notice that in that shadow inventory, I talked about properties that are delinquent. Owners are seriously delinquent in their mortgage. Now, it is not always true, but it is overwhelmingly true that there's a characteristic about the properties owned by people who are seriously delinquent in their mortgage. What is also true as an important fact in those cases?
Underwater.
They're underwater. You don't have to be underwater to be delinquent, right? You lose your job, can't make your payment, but you've got all kinds of equity in your house. But in most of the cases where there is serious delinquency, the people are underwater. All right, so there are two ways we know that you can handle a property where there's a delinquency and it's underwater. A foreclosure and sale of the property as REO is one way to handle it. And we know that for the first 2 years of the serious decline in the market, that's the way lenders chose to handle it. De facto, they foreclosed rather than accommodate reasonable short sale procedures. And we know that. Anybody who in 2008 and 9 and 10 was trying to do a short sale, probably you threw up your hands and said, this ain't for me. Look at what they did. They're going to ding me on my fees. I've got to handle the whole messy, time-consuming, frustrating process of communicating with the lender and the seller and the buyer and everything else. It's more time than I've got. And if there's a company out there that'll do this for me, and there are, they're going to charge me an arm and a leg. And so I'm going to get knocked on my head with the fee, and I'm going to try to pass that on to the selling agent, and I'm going to get into a dispute over what the MLS means when I offered, say, 300 chickens, and now my 600 chickens is only 450 chickens or 500. Now, is that going to be shared by the selling agent? No. The selling agent says, go pound sand. You offered me 300 chickens. I want them. Well, so now I'm just going to put half of whatever I get. Is that an offer precise enough to be accepted under the rules of contract formation that the MLS entails? No. But the NAR said, you know what? It doesn't meet our rules, but the heck with it. It's the market reality. We're going to allow it. Or we're going to permit local association MLSs that are realtor-owned to do it. And so you have a mess. And it takes forever. It takes forever. And there is a dual track that continues. The foreclosure train is running at the same time the short sale train is running, and you never can quite catch up. And very often you get relatively close to the short sale, and these two sides are not talking to each other. They're figuratively just across the hall from each other, but they're not communicating. You know, have you ever tried to get something done by Verizon or Comcast? I had the most frustrating series of incidences with those guys on relatively straightforward stuff that you can imagine. I can't tell you the hours that I spent on hold waiting, trying to get stuff corrected. At one point I got a human and in some sort of administrative position, and I said, you know what, for a company whose business is communication, I have never seen such rotten communication internally. You all don't talk to each other, but you hold yourself out as a communication company? Well, these lenders were the same way. It's almost like these two people are sitting here and here. I've got the foreclosure and I've got the short sale, and the foreclosure guy's going, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you. When you call, you never get John twice. All right, is it a wonder? And all kinds of other, what I call pathologies, arose that we've talked about. The pathology of the seller doesn't care what the price is. The seller's not getting anything. The listing agent puts it out there, and some bottom fisher comes along and puts in some price. The seller didn't give a rip. Take it. Send it on to the lender. And now somebody realizes, wait a minute, that's not, I would pay more for that. That's a decent house, and puts in a better offer, and the listing agent sits on it, treats it as a backup, never shows it to the lender. Don't let Fannie or Freddie, the half of the mortgages that they own, ever find out about that, or you'll be blackballed from half your business for life. But that was a real problem. So we had market distortions created by our improper perceptions of how short sales should be conducted. Well, there are lots of reasons why short sales were unpopular. And yet, the alternative of foreclosure was grinding to a halt. And so what did we have? We had building up this bottom tier, not in terms of price. You see, the price is irrelevant here. It's the characteristics of the property and the mortgage in relation to each other, and the seller's servicing of the mortgage. That's this other tier. Well, that other tier kept the market from finding its bottom. And year after year, we continued to see declines in prices year over year. And that has only recently changed. You know, one of the things that the newspaper article said today that I hadn't seen in a while, but I was going to predict that it was true. You remember, how many of you have heard me talk about the collapse of the mortgage market, why it collapsed? I know some of you have. But, you know, we saw a very simple set of truths. 2000 to 2006, for example, 2001, we saw average home income. You know, this is what was happening to average family income. And over the previous 20 years or so, average family incomes tracked, increases in average family incomes tracked increases in average home prices. Imagine that. The average house cost what the average family can afford to pay. And if we earn more money, we can afford to pay more and move up a little bit in the quality or size of the house that we buy. But what we saw starting in 2001 is that home prices just went straight up and far outstripped average increases in family income. And people who saw this distortion pretty much knew that we had a problem. This actually got up to about 8%. Home prices doubled as average family incomes were going up at 2, 3, 4% a year, which was nice and good and historically about what the average was. Well, this article today said that prices have now once again gotten to where the average of the 80s and 90s was in the first part of this last decade in terms of increases in family incomes. They have come back into equilibrium, roughly, with where they were for the previous 20 years, tracking each other very carefully. We've also seen evidence of this every time you read the data about local or national home sales or prices. You see prices have now gone back to where they were in 2004. And then now they're at 2003. Now they're at prices that we saw last in 2002. You know, all the same thing. You can talk about relation to family incomes. You can talk about in relation to where they were in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. But what we knew is that when the distortion really became a bubble around 2003, when this really got out of whack, we called it a boom in 2001, 2, and 3. Until 3, it became a bubble, and a lot of people saw that it was unsustainable when we had gotten up here. This is a boom. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Well, all those things now are coming into pretty clear view. And where are we? We've seen affordability roughly back into equilibrium with price. We have seen price back in line with historic trends. But what are we looking at? We're looking at houses that have sold. Right? That's where we get our data. We're looking at houses that have sold. Now tell me about your market. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about your market. You have a relative shortage of inventory. I'm hearing this all over the state, and I see it in every article I read about the housing market. Why? Because there is a gigantic swath of properties that are essentially locked up. Why are they locked up? They've been locked up because of the robo-signing problem. They've been locked up because, are you ready? 11 million homeowners are underwater on their mortgage, and they can't replace their house. In the first place, nobody wants to deal with them. They're too complicated. Realtors shun them. Buyers shun them. Lenders are not set up to operate in a reasonable manner when it comes to a short sale. These houses lock up. Sellers who would otherwise have an opportunity to move and take another job or another opportunity don't have those opportunities now. The job market has been so poor, so they're locked in their house. They also can't replace the house because their credit is damaged by this whole process. And the rental markets are tight from all the people that were foreclosed on or who have lost jobs and so on. And we continue to have kids that move out of the house, go to college, need a place to rent. And we all know, if we're in property management, that the property management market has been tight. All right? The only construction that's been done until very recently has been in multifamily housing. I read an article back in the beginning of the summer, construction zip. You read below the headline, and it says 80% of it was in multifamily construction. Well, so what does this tell us about how we deal with our buyers now? Well, what part of the market is doing well? That tier that is not affected by sellers who are underwater, delinquent, or property has been or is about to be foreclosed on. All right? If your house is in decent shape, average shape, no worse than average, the seller's been living in it and maintaining it, the seller is above water, and therefore the procedure is relatively simple compared to a short sale procedure, and the buyers are relatively attracted to these properties because, unlike the foreclosure market, which has certain needs that we're going to talk about that many buyers find unattainable, investors like it, but the average buyer has a little harder time. And the short sale market, which has been a real headache, what we find is that these properties are attractive. But what do we know about that segment of the market? It's relatively limited. Which is why the commentary that you see, if you look carefully, you don't see the headlines. And if you look beyond the headlines, like the USA Today, wait for the analysis of what's happened to average time on market, the average number of months of inventory that are available. You know, they say that 6 months inventory is the typical average healthy balance. It would take 6 months to clear our inventory. That's about balance nationwide historically. Northern Virginia now is dipping toward 4 months. Some portions of Northern Virginia are at 2 months. Your market is still a little bit above that equilibrium price, but it is moving rapidly toward that price. I don't see anything that's going to stop it from bursting through that at some point. You all have, I discovered today in talking to the brokers, you have a little bit of a problem with your MLS in the way it measures properties and time on the market. It doesn't count certain kinds of properties until, like for example, a short sale is not counted as a resale is. In other words, it is considered pending at the time the contract is ratified. I think you have an artificially long time on market because it's closing that dictates when that property is treated the same way a resale would be at the time a contract was put in. All right? A regular resale. So yours is above the equilibrium point, but I think if you measured it the same way Northern Virginia and Richmond do, you would probably be at or below the equilibrium point anyway. Now, you're seeing that because you're seeing multiple offers on reasonably priced properties where the seller has maintained them and there's equity. In other words, the typical kind of situation. But what have we got there? What is accounting for that? We know it's not because people are taking new jobs and moving to take advantage of new opportunities. That's not happening. We know it's not because foreclosures are flooding the market. That hasn't been happening. You know, what is happening? Why is that happening? A shortage. It's a shortage. More than anything else, it is the fact that the supply and demand curve have shifted. And are those curves going to shift back? Elementary economics, guys. If one of those curves shifts, it changes the equilibrium point. And the market will return to equilibrium. Well, what might change the market? And here are your opportunities. First, the resolution of the robo-signing problem this spring resulted in a very interesting settlement. And that interesting settlement provides that lenders are going to have to do a number of things. First, there are interactions with the delinquent buyer, or the delinquent owner, that are likely to lead to more properties being put on the market in a short sale situation rather than a foreclosure. Now, those of you who heard me talk about short sales as long ago as 3 or 4 years, note that I have always maintained that it made no sense for a seller to foreclose on a property if there was a reasonable short sale market out there to give them accurate price signals. All right? Now, we weren't helping in giving accurate price signals. I think unknowingly we were treating short sales as if they were a typical resale and holding on to the better offers as backups and therefore distorting market signals. But we know that a foreclosure costs a lender about $60,000 from the day they decide to foreclose until the end of the process when they have sold that house as REO. Insurance, taxes, maintenance, repair of all the vandalism, paying the realtor, the legal fees to foreclose up front, total cost 60 grand. Why would you not accept a short sale as an alternative to holding a property in a declining market and then selling it months from now at a lower price after spending 60 grand, unless the market isn't sending you accurate signals, or unless you refuse to hear those signals and deal with them because you're inadequately staffed or motivated. All right, so some of these things are beginning to change. How are they beginning to change? Has anybody else noticed the pollen and junk out here? The Washington Post had an article the other day that they have never seen allergies as bad as they are now, ever. And there's a new super pollen. Have you heard about that?
That's all we need. Thanks for more good news.
The warm winter last year, the hot, dry summer this year, mild weather has created such an abundance of all the allergens that affect people, and they've even noted this thing they call a super pollen that's pretty resistant to ordinary antihistamines and so on. Anyway, I've got bad allergies, and my daughter and I have been suffering. Well, what's changing? Lenders have now agreed in this settlement that they are going to begin the process of adopting HEMP and HAFA standards for those people that meet them in a short sale context, and minimizing the number of foreclosures that they see, or at least reducing the number that they see. One of the reasons that you have not seen as many foreclosures come back onto the market as you would expect after that suit was settled in the spring, opening the doors, you would think, to 4 or 5 million properties to come back as the lenders saw fit. Not all at once. It would hurt the lender as much as anybody else to depress the values. But you would expect to see a steady stream of them. I think you're going to see a steady stream of them. A lot of buyers or owners don't qualify for short sale relief under HAFA, HEMP, or other programs, and maybe defrauded the lender in the first place by lying about income or other things, and are therefore not eligible for short sale relief. So you're going to see foreclosures, but not in the number that we might otherwise have expected because of the nature of the settlement. What you are going to see is an increased emphasis on short sales. Now, let's take a look at what that means. We groan, all right? But the settlement also required, are you sitting down? That the lenders who are participants in this, for people who are eligible, pre-approve at least the basic terms of the contract that they will accept. That they do away with dual tracking. So once a short sale is in process, the foreclosure process stops. You're not racing against the foreclosure. Increasing staff, and especially the technology that they use, to make it easier for the person you talk to on the phone to see the conversations you've had in the past and to know what has been agreed to or already discussed, or what instructions have been given. To enhance the forgiveness of debt. They have agreed on a maximum amount that they will agree to pay second mortgage holders, which is a huge headache for anybody that tries to do these things. They have long since agreed that they will not, and that's at $6,000. Now you know that deals go to the mat over the difference in 3 and 8, Well, they've agreed on 6. They've agreed they will not touch the realtor fee if it doesn't exceed 6%. And they've agreed, not through the settlement, but this is a part, at least I don't think it was through the settlement, but this is becoming a reality with the lenders. I can tell you this from personal experience, that they will no longer require the realtor to pay the cost of an expert in maneuvering through the wiles of the short sale approval process. They won't require the realtor to pay it. They will allow it to be paid out of the proceeds of the sale. In other words, since the seller gets nothing, the lender will pay it if it's a reasonable fee. So you're seeing, in some areas, you're already seeing people who are beginning to specialize in the work of doing these short sales. You know, good staff available to do that who know how to navigate through Equator, and the myriad requirements of all the different lenders can really cut the time that it takes. We're seeing that time now fall from 45 to 60 days. That people who are experienced in doing them and know how to multitask can get these things down pretty quickly. They don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they pick up the phone. They know who to call. They have the contacts. They know they've got their computer programs. Boom, boom, boom. So for a lot of reasons, we're going to see that short sales are going to become more attractive as an alternative to the foreclosure. And if I'm right, and I think I am, because every bit of evidence I get from associations like this that I talk to is that they're seeing an increase in short sales. I don't know if that's been your experience, but in the Richmond area, big increase. Northern Virginia, pretty substantial increase. I think you're going to see more of that, and so I think you need to learn how to do them. But since we're talking about buyers, we need to teach our buyers how to approach them, because certain truths haven't changed. But just to complete the story about the market, and we'll get more into this as we talk about what's going to happen and how we guide buyers through this distressed market. And I still think we have a distressed market, no question about it. I just don't think the signal you're getting about price appreciation in this top tier is the only story you're going to hear. I'm not saying it's just fraud, but I'm saying there are going to be things that happen that moderate it. They'll be good for you, but I don't think you should accept this as a market signal that we've reached the bottom and now we're heading up. Remember, we're back where we were when incomes and house prices were in sync. We continue to see big increases while incomes are flat, as they are. There's no growth in income. Then you are going to again see downward pressure on prices because lenders are not going to permit this to happen again, this bubble. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I'd see is where lenders are contacting now
Yes.
people who are underwater and making basically deals to reduce
A take it or leave it deal.
reduce the interest rate and reduce some of the debt.
Well, those programs have been around. But let me tell you something even more interesting. They are not only calling people and trying to get them to reorganize their affairs, but that has been tried throughout this period, and it's always been unsuccessful. You know why? If my mortgage is $950 or $850, it's still good money after bad because I'm underwater. I have no equity. My goal is to get out of this dog. You know, and so the incentive to take a lower mortgage payment, yeah, it's good, but it doesn't solve the problem. Now, in the first place, it doesn't unlock the lender's equity, or not equity, but the lender's cash. And this is just a bundle of cash sitting there. It's non-performing in many cases. And if it's not non-performing now, it will be at some point for most of these people. Let's unlock it and put it to better use. What lenders are beginning to do now, and Fannie and Freddie have begun to do this, is to call realtors and give them the names of targeted areas of owners who are underwater, many of whom are delinquent, for the realtor to approach those people and say, you got a chance here. We are now unlocking our ability to end your free ride. That sounds harsh, but you know what I mean? You haven't been paying your mortgage now for 2 years. Many of these people haven't paid their mortgage in 2 years. Talk about a stimulus. They haven't had a housing payment in months and months and months. Not blaming them. The point is that in the old days you would never have been able to do this. And the lenders now, free of the robo-signing problem, are approaching these people and say, let's make a deal. I'll forgive the debt. I'll pay some expert to handle it. Your realtor will put it on the market. We'll limit what they can make, but at market rates. And you get out. I get my money, such as there is in this house, out, and you go on and live somewhere else. Or we foreclose.
But they're doing this to keep them in the house.
They are, but those programs don't work, and they never have worked. I know. Well, that's not new, though. These programs that the federal government has tried throughout this period, you know, remember the first one, I can't remember the acronym, but whatever it was supposed to keep 4 or 5 or 6 million, 160,000 or 300,000. They always fall short because they don't go to the ultimate incentive, which is to get out of the house or to get rid of the deficiency. And the lender can do that, but the lender can do that only on the lender's terms. And the lender's not just going to forgive your deficiency and refinance at a lower rate at the same time they're refinancing. No. They're not going to do that. But they, well, not to forgive the deficiency and refinance. They're offering to cut the interest rate and refinance. And so what lenders are trying to do here is for those people who have the ability to stay in the house and want to stay in the house to make it possible for them to do so. But there is a huge swath of these properties. You know, you got several million foreclosure REO candidates. There's a little overlap of 3 million. About 3 million of the 11 million properties that are short sale candidates underwater. About 3 million of those are deficient. They're way behind. They're delinquent in their mortgage. That means 8 million or so, and then the balance of the 3 million overlap, you probably got close to 15 million properties that in these two categories, okay? 14, 15 million. And the lenders are now paying attention to them. But I'm telling you, their focus is going to be a multi-focus. Those people who can, want to, and are able to stay in a house, we're going to help them do it. Those who can't, or won't, or are motivated to get out, we're going to make it easier for them to get out by selling the house as opposed to foreclosing it and paying the fee, the cost that we have. Back here, there are a lot of hands. I'll get.
So what happens? How does the bank come up with the value of the property, sort of doing a BPO?
No, they will. They will always do some sort of market analysis. Most of the lenders don't require a full-blown appraisal, but a CMA or a BPO is always required. Now, here's the thing, that as that begins to happen, what are you going to see happen to that upper tier? It's going to moderate, isn't it? Because these are not bad houses. It's not like there's something wrong with these houses. There's something wrong with the financial picture. But the sellers have been in them, maintaining them relatively, compared to a vacant REO, for example. And they will come into competition with the houses that are not financially distressed. Another category of properties that I think we can see coming into competition with properties not distressed are REO that have already been bought, renovated, and leased. Now, they are a perfect candidate to be attracted to selling to lock in profits that they've made by buying a couple of years ago. Now the market at that tier, again, it's not price. It's these properties now moved into that tier. They are not distressed. They're in good condition. And you have a seller motivated. You know, so we're going to see some of those properties attractive as well. One of the lessons when I talk about the property management end of this later on today is going to be that, well, for the short term, we're likely to see increased or stable demand for, we're likely to see more and more of these properties come onto the market. You think it would moderate rentals. But I think you're going to see a pretty big number of those properties move out into that upper tier and be sold to lock in the profits and liberate cash, because they're an attractive sale. Let's see, I saw a hand over here that's been up a long time. Yes.
You made a comment just a few minutes ago about the lenders calling realtors to let them know about these people.
Mm-hmm.
How can they do that? How can they call a third party and say, hey, this person's behind on their mortgage, or this. How can they do
I don't know what they tell them. All I know is that I know that realtors are being approached. And they may have the consent of the seller to give their name out. I don't know, or the owner. But I know that realtors are beginning to hear of these opportunities. But it's going to require you to know this business and to have a team set up. I don't think you're going to want to try to do what they're wanting and run this through the process yourself. I don't know, I'll leave that to the way these things work. But if I'm right about the way these things are all coming together, then I think you're going to see many more short sales than you have been seeing. There's another reason I'll talk about in a minute, but I had a few questions. Charlie.
So I presume that we're kind of talking about first mortgages.
Primarily.
Okay. So there
No short sale on a second mortgage, typically. There's nothing for the second lender to get.
Okay, so you don't see second mortgage people putting pressure on first mortgage, or first mortgage people putting pressure on second?
Well, second lender can foreclose. That's the pressure. They foreclose, but so what? They sell it subject to the first. Who's going to buy it? Or they sell it and pay off the first. They don't have enough money to pay off the first. Seconds aren't foreclosing, and they have no leverage in bringing a short sale. They're not going to force the seller to sell or give the seller the alternative. The first gets the money, and it's only at the blessing of the first that the second gets anything. Because a foreclosure would wipe that second out, since there's not enough even to pay the first.
Well, that's what puts people over underwater a lot of times, is that second.
Yeah, sometimes it does. Yeah.
But
But if they're non-performing, why wouldn't the first move and then take 100% of what they can get? 100%. I mean, if the second occupies a position that is still in equity as to some portion of it, the first has no reason not to accommodate. They'll get 100% paid. Yeah. So, the second can bring a foreclosure action and actually get something out of it. At the foreclosure sale, they'll get enough money to pay off the first, and they'll get the rest. But foreclosure sales fetch a lower price than a short sale properly done, if we let the market price be signaled. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
so you think that the second people are just going to settle for what they can get out of it if it goes to
Well, if they're also underwater,
Right.
they've been fighting for scraps.
Right.
You've all seen it. Hey, we'll give you $3,000. I want 8. I want 10. 10? Are you crazy? Nobody gives them 10. I don't care if they have $100,000 second. They get $4,000 or $5,000. Well, the settlement says 6. We will let it go up to 6. We may go higher, but we will never go lower if you've got more than that amount. We'll always pay up to 6. Yes.
I wanted to ask you had made a comment that there are companies who are taking over some of the very tedious and difficult deals of uploading and doing. And is there a typical fee that these companies are being paid?
It's anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 or $1,900 or $2,000. It's between 1 and 2.
So it would be pretty standard if somebody,
The lender set the fee.
the lender said.
Yeah, Fannie and Bank of America and all that are setting that fee, and it's somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. Oh, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. Is there a fee, a standard fee for these services that are being rendered to shepherd this through in a manner, by people who have done it a million times and know who to talk to and can expedite it? Yeah, and the lenders have agreed anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, but they tend to huddle in the $1,250 to $1,500 range. And they're not requiring the realtor to pay it. And the time is reduced if you have people that know what they're doing. Yes?
You mentioned 11 to 15 million house owners underwater right now?
Underwater or delinquent.
Okay.
Most of those who are delinquent are underwater, but many are not.
So are you
Or also owned by lenders already.
where are you getting that number?
Just from what I read in the news accounts, and I scour 5 papers a day, and every article on the housing market I see or the financial markets, I take notice of. And they do differ a little bit. They're not always the same. But the most recent numbers I've seen are consistent. There are about 11 million houses that are underwater. About 3 million of those are delinquent.
Okay.
And
So you're not saying all 11 million are going to come on the market?
oh no, heavens no, heavens
3
no.
million of the 11
What I'm-
million want to move? or
3 million of the 11 are going to be the first to go.
Okay.
Because the lenders now, free of the robo-signing suit, having settled it and having established procedures about how to handle it, are going to be approaching these delinquent people. And they're going to be saying, look, pay me or I foreclose, or let's get the house sold. You know, that's going to be increasingly what you're going to see happen. And what they're going to be doing is, and this is the good thing, they've dropped the resistance to having companies streamline the process, to having realtors earn their fee, and they've set up procedures, or are doing so, that allows it to work in a way that it never did before. And so these are going to become more appealing. And they'll be appealing to sellers because the sellers will not have the stigma of a foreclosure, but will also have a much reduced financial outcome. Foreclosure doesn't, they're typically not going to release the deficiency. But in a short sale, that is something that will be happening more and more if you meet the HAPA and HAFA requirements, which most of these delinquent people do. Many don't, but most do. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, second part of this. Fannie and Freddie have adopted similar rules to what govern the settlement of the big banks in the spring. And those rules go into effect November 1st. Now, I can make all the jokes in the world, but I'll let you make the punchline. Whereas the lenders, you can expect to do it in X period of time. They're moving toward this. Fannie and Freddie are X plus 30. But they've always been longer than the lenders. So Fannie and Freddie are reducing the time period rather dramatically. Now, they are not governed by HAFA and HAMP. HAMP is a precursor to HAFA, in case you know what these things mean. They are not governed by this. Fannie and Freddie are not. They've adopted their own independent rules. But the conservator of Fannie and Freddie has made the same decision that governed the settlement with the lenders. And that settlement is get these off the books. Or not settlement, but that thing is, let's facilitate the market finding a real bottom, and let's get people out of these houses that they can't afford, especially those that are delinquent. And for those, when the economy picks up, that have opportunities and want to move, let's have a procedure in place that doesn't basically prevent them from being able to do that. So I think over the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see a pretty steady increase in the ease with which these things can be done and the benefits that sellers will reap from this. But it's going to have an effect on your market. It's going to mean that that upper tier is going to be facing some competition. But that's not bad. I think you'd rather have 20 deals at 190 than 10 deals at 200 or 210. And so would our market, frankly. It unlocks a lot more of the capital that is just totally useless now. It is locked in an asset that is non-productive. That house that is underwater. And that's part of what's guiding this, and the lenders are responding. Yes? Beg your pardon?
Do they address credit scores? Because there are sellers out there who will not do a short sale because they don't want to take any more of a hit on their credit.
Yeah, the question is, are they addressing credit scores? There was no formal announcement in the settlement that banks will facilitate sales by people who, or they will not ding the credit scores. But I think the early indications are that the banks are being pretty darn gentle about it. They no longer have that chip on the shoulder that they used to have. How dare you not pay me back? And how dare you borrow all this money that on a house that was going up in value and sucker me into making a bad loan? You know, they had a real chip on their shoulder about this. But mainly in the first couple of years, they had lost their capital. And they couldn't staff it, and they were doing anything they could to get that extra dollar, even a point out of your pocket. So the early indications are that they are not as severe on the sellers on their credit score as they had been. But the main thing is that the more of the properties that would have been a foreclosure that become a short sale gives the seller two benefits regardless of any ding on your credit. Number one, a huge percentage of them will have substantial or all of the debt, the deficiency forgiven. Number two, the effect of a short sale versus a foreclosure on your credit is gentler. So, yeah. Now I don't know about Fannie and Freddie, but if I know Fannie and Freddie, their goal is Let's not punish anybody. Let's just get the assets unlocked.
Then the second part of that question is, has the IRS joined up on that as far as forgiveness of debt? And they can continue that.
Well, the forgiveness of debt under the statute that was enacted some time back for purchase money mortgages, that forgiveness of debt is expunged. It is not considered taxable income. The only thing that has been considered taxable income is cash you took out in a refi. And we'll talk about that when we talk about short sales here in a minute.
But I thought there was a sunset on the IRS rule.
2012, at the end of this year. I fully expect that in the lame duck session we're going to see that extended. Yeah, I don't know. I say I fully expect it, but I think so. Pressure is going to be coming not just from the banks, but from Fannie and Freddie and consumer groups. Can you imagine the Congress saying, no, these people that are now selling their houses and moving out are going to have to pay big tax bills? I just don't think that's going to happen. It'll be a part of the budget negotiations, though, because they have this crazy idea up there that if you give a benefit here, you got to take away a benefit over here. This, so we'll see. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I doubt it. I doubt that you're going to see the cash out. You see that they get dinged on this forgiveness of debt income. Blood out of a stone anyway. I don't see. One last question. We're going to take a break.
Yes. Are you seeing any stuff in-house if here the hardships have to be approved for a short sale? Because banks have been terribly strict on those issues.
Yeah. Question is, are you going to see easier, or is it going to be less strict in the way you deal with the hardship issue of this whole thing? All indications are yes, that the hardship letter will be important, but the main focus is going to be, for most of the lenders in Fannie and Freddie, did you defraud me? Yeah, I know you took all the equity out and bought a new car and all that, but that was in large part our fault for letting you borrow up to 50% of your income. Put 50% of your income to servicing your mortgage, when 30% used to be a ceiling that we obeyed pretty rigorously. Turns out the laws of nature are not repealable, and 30% was pretty much. But at the height of this, in 2004 and 5, Countrywide was making loans that averaged something like 50% of your income went to service your mortgage. Fine. So what if your house is going up in value? You got a college bill, you need a car repair, or any other expense, where do you get it? The ATM that is your house. You cash it out. All right? So people understood at that time, and I think Fannie and Freddie understood, that the second mortgages that come onto the house, and if you look profligate in the amount of money you were taking out, it was really to replace that 20% of your income that should never have gone to the housing to start with. Point is, guys, I think, and I don't want to draw too broad a picture. I want to alert you to a trend. This isn't going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen the same with every lender. And there will be difference between that half of the market that is Fannie and Freddie and the other half that is privately owned mortgage-backed securities or individual loans. But the trend, I think, is emerging pretty clearly as a result of the Fannie and Freddie rules going into effect in November and the bank settlement this spring, that the focus is going to be on short sales as opposed to foreclosures. It will not be 100%. It will not be painless. It will not be instant. But I think we can see that that part of the market, and what a welcome change it's going to be for most people, especially if we have any revival of the economy and these people who are now long since past the time that they would ordinarily have moved. You know, we're already in the 6th year of this downturn. The market peaked in 5, leveled in 6, first decline in 7, collapse 8, 9, 10, 11, and stabilize in 12. All right, we are in year 6. Most people don't stay in a house more than 6, 7 years. So look at all the people that are ready to move. They've outgrown the house, or they need to downsize, or they need to move. And when they need to move to take another job or an opportunity or get out of this house because they're retiring, whatever, there's going to be a huge pent-up demand in this bottom tier. So let's leave it this way, that this tier that we are seeing now that is giving us a fairly decent appreciation in values. This is exaggerated, but you know what I mean. This is not exactly froth. It's real. There is a real market signal, but the market signal is that there's a shortage. And that shortage is going to be abated in substantial degree over the next few years by an unlocking of this previously locked up inventory of housing. Most of which is people who are underwater but not delinquent, but millions of pieces of which are people who would have been in a foreclosure, but the robo-signing thing put an end to that, that now would be facing a foreclosure that the lenders are going to facilitate short sales on, and then another group that will come out a little bit at a time so we don't do too much to damage the market and the value of other collaterals. The lenders will be careful about this. Foreclosures will continue. We can expect to see historically elevated numbers of foreclosures for 3 or 4 more years. And we can expect to see during that same time an increased number of short sales, all of which will moderate somewhat this increase. And then we got the big question mark about the economy. Who knows? Take your own guess. But this is going to happen no matter what. It's already happening. Much of what we're going to talk about now, we're going to be able to go through relatively quickly, because if I'm even halfway right about what I think is going to be happening to the market, it really will inform our counseling to the buyers. All right? So let's just take a look at, pretty quickly, let's go through some of this stuff. We always have to be mindful now of the increased difficulty of getting a mortgage, and that's healthy in many ways. Returning to old debt ratios, or the amount of money that of your income that you would commit to housing. Requiring larger down payments to create a disincentive to default if there should be a decline or some other hardship. All these things we have seen now since the crash come back into greater vogue. The one thing I would be mindful of is that again, for the reasons that I pointed out, I am hearing now some tales that really kind of make me blanch just a little bit, of buyers chasing houses much higher than I think is healthy as to any number of these ratios or amount of down payment or the terms of the loan, but especially in this idea that we have turned the corner and we can expect price appreciation to continue as we've seen it over the last 6 months or so. For a lot of reasons, I think there are going to be opportunities for buyers, and we're seeing those opportunities appear now, that they did not have 6 months, a year ago, certainly didn't have 2 years ago. So just keep this in mind. I'm not saying that you tell an owner, a buyer, not to chase a house with in a multiple offer situation because you're going to be paying too much anytime you have to compete for a house. That's not my point. Just bear in mind, and I think it would be healthy for us, and don't we all wish we had been doing this in 2003 and 4, that price increases may or may not be sustainable, and valuations go up or down depending on fundamentals as opposed to temporary market misallocations of capital. I'm not saying that's where we are now by any stretch, and I don't consider the appreciations we've seen unhealthy. In fact, what I think, when you combine them with other things, is that you're going to see them attract more sellers of previously foreclosed and renovated properties, short sale people who now see a smaller deficiency, people who have a more forgiving and compliant and cooperative lender, the federal government and Fannie and Freddie being more cooperative in getting these things done. So just bear in mind, this is not a bad time to be buying, don't get me wrong, but I think let's moderate our views a little bit of what we've seen in the last 6 months and prepare for what's going to be coming. Now, all the kinds of things that we used to say about short sales that were true, what is your time horizon? If the recent trends and developments are in any way indicative, we are going to see an easier row to hoe in the short sale process. I think that should attract more buyers into the process than we have previously seen. If you just look at the numbers, they really tell a story. You look in any kind of relatively efficient market, and I think the Greater Hampton Roads market is certainly an efficient market by any standards. In other words, there is lots available at just about every quality and price range. All right, so the market is going to reflect pretty accurately what stuff is worth. 2 years ago in Hampton Roads, the differential between a resale and a short sale of identical property, otherwise identical property in terms of its quality, location, etc., desirability, had breached 25%. It was something like 26%. And in the foreclosure world, it was even higher. This otherwise identical property in the resale market would fetch something like 30% less on the foreclosure front. What we saw happen is that those numbers began to decline a little bit as the overall market continued to decline, and brisk interest in foreclosures really snapped up the properties that were for sale. That put a kind of a floor under the foreclosure prices and kind of boosted them a little. Where you used to see the multiple offers was in the foreclosure realm. And it also saw a bit of a decrease in the prices for resales because the economy and the market were so bad. All right, so that gap narrowed, but it never got below 20%. And we're starting to see that gap. We saw that gap go back and forth. We're seeing it now something like 20%. The latest that I saw, Virginia-wide, and that's pretty consistent with nationwide. Virginia is a wonderful bellwether in so many ways in terms of things like housing and so on. You know, we are just about average in size and number of houses and prices and so on. That we've seen that fluctuate between 20 and 25%. It's now back around 20. Okay? But what that means is that there's still a bargain to be had in the short sale arena. Otherwise, virtually identical properties, if your buyer now has the willingness to undertake the foreclosure process. It's not going to change overnight, as I have repeatedly said, but more and more we are going to see it change. So here's the lesson. In the in the short sale realm, don't turn your head away from those automatically. Think about and examine and talk to your colleagues about their experiences in getting short sale properties cleared, and see if we don't begin to see a little bit of improvement in that, and then target your buyers accordingly. Buyers may very well look at the pretty decent little increase we've seen on the resale market and say, I don't know that I want to fight that shortage. If I've got the stomach for it and it's improving, maybe I'll look at a 20% savings, and just keep that in mind. On the foreclosure side, I expect we are going to see a steady increase in the amount of inventory that's going to come out, or a steady amount. I don't think we're going to see it increase a whole lot. So let's talk about the buyers who are interested in one of these two types of distressed properties. Now, some of you have heard me say this before, but it's really the case. It's been the case. I think it's beginning to change a little bit, but it's been the case that we and our clients have tended to view short sales and foreclosures very differently. Very differently. We and our clients have tended to think of the short sale as more like a resale, and the foreclosure as the bailiwick of the investor who's got cash and can come in and just take it like it is and put cash on the table and close whenever, and then they're going to renovate it or flip it, but most of the time they'll put a little bit of money into it, either flip it or lease it. Okay? And that's not our short sale buyer. It hasn't typically been. Investors don't particularly like short sales. They're just so darn difficult to do for the same reasons that you know. My point has always been that if we treat the short sale purchaser the same way we treat the resale purchaser, we're really missing the realities of the situation. This side of the hall in that servicing company and this side of the hall are just one day apart. One day apart. It was a short sale candidate, no longer. We're fed up. We're not going to take the lack of payment any longer, and they flip it over to this side of the aisle and they begin the foreclosure. But we've always, at some point, that happens. All right? Now, we've always, however, viewed this guy's attitude about the property as being totally different from this guy's attitude. All right? That the short sale guy somehow or another is willing to deal with this the way he would if he was just a regular owner of an ordinary property. That isn't true at all. Think about the foreclosure candidate who succeeds. Let me give you some characteristics of the foreclosure candidate who succeeds. Wants to borrow 90%, wants a home inspection contingency and a sale of home contingency and a financing contingency, wants inspections, wants you to pay $5,000 to $8,000 worth of the closing costs. Is that person going to succeed in buying a foreclosure? You tell me. All right. Who is the successful foreclosure buyer? I'm going to check it out, but I know it's got problems, and I'm going to build them into my price. I've either got the financing approved, I've got a line of credit, or I've got investors that work with me, or I've got the money. I'm going to put the money on the table. I'll close as soon as the lender wants to, subject to my title work, and lining up the people who are going to come in and do renovations and so on. And I've already got the agent hired that I'm going to have manage it for me. Or, okay, is that more like what you would ordinarily see on the foreclosure side? Yeah. In fact, isn't one of your greatest frustrations on the foreclosure side that you're representing a couple that wants to buy this house and the investor steps in and buys it and you never get a second shot? And you wonder, why? Wait a minute, they didn't come back to me. Oh, we would have paid a little bit more.
More than money.
Look, lenders have relationships with investors who buy their foreclosure properties. And the listing agents have those relationships. That's where they arise from. And this person uses, sometimes, I don't mean this negatively even, sometimes they use the person who comes to the foreclosure, wants to buy it and live in it, or just a one-off investment property. Maybe you want to take a little flutter with a decent property at a good price. Almost as a stalking horse. Yeah, what's it worth? Yeah, that's worth what somebody will pay for it. But the point is, we have very different ideas about these buyers. But what if we started thinking about the short sale purchaser a little bit more like the foreclosure purchaser? Frankly, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of competition here from the people that typically buy foreclosures. There's a little bigger spread, and they have relationships with the people in the REO departments that they don't have with sellers. All right? But let's think about those characteristics of the foreclosure person that we can incorporate into the short sale purchaser. Well, obviously, we're not going to expect the typical person buying a short sale to live in to be able to put up cash. But what about a decent down payment? More and more that's becoming de rigueur anyway. But are we likely to see, because let's stop and think about it. What does the approval procedure for the foreclosure buyer typically look like? You got the money? Can you close? Let's close. But let's look at the procedure for a short sale. And I don't see this changing. Each piece will get a little easier to do, but there are going to be three or four pieces. One piece has become clarified. Number one, the seller has to be approved. Seller has to be approved for a short sale. Hardship, did you cheat me? I want to see your tax returns the year in which you bought this property. Did you declare that you were making 75 but you paid the government on the basis of 40? What is your hardship? What do you have by way of a job? What can you afford to pay me back? How long can we continue? Maybe it's better for me to let you continue to stay in the property and ease a burden on what you owe me. The seller's characteristics are critical. That's leg number one. Leg number two, the property. Is the contract a reasonable contract based on the value of this property? What is the condition of the property? What is the property worth? What is this contract like? Is the deal that I'm looking at a reasonable deal? Is my buyer chewing into the equity or the proceeds that I would receive from this by 101 different concessions that they want? And so asking for assistance on the closing costs, okay, it used to be they said zippity-doo-dah. Now they'll agree to a little bit. Even foreclosure sellers, REO owners will agree to a certain amount of closing cost help, or at least some of them will. That used to be a no-no. But this idea that you're going to get the same deal out of this lender that you would get in the resale market is silly, especially since buyers have gotten spoiled the last few years, that you could ask for the moon from a seller desperate to get rid of this house. Markets will adjust that a little bit. If we've got multiple offers on houses, then maybe they'll have to adjust what they ask the seller to pay back. But the point is, the more you can make it attractive for this lender, the more likely you are to get the deal. Home inspection, get it done quickly. Anything that needs to be done, put it in your price. This idea about waiting until the deal is approved with a very liberal inspection contingency that allows you to walk away if you don't fix everything, forget it. Why would a lender be attracted to that, spending all the time and money through the approval process to have you walk away over a furnace? It's not going to work. Or if it does work, it's going to be harder to jam down. So do your inspection quickly. Yeah, okay, well, if I end up not buying the house and the seller doesn't get approved, then I've wasted my money. Then you're the wrong buyer for a short sale. You're the wrong buyer. You think the person who is buying the foreclosure is going to say, I'm going to wait till you tell me I can have the deal. Then I'll inspect it and demand that you make repairs. And how often would they get a deal? These guys are sitting right next to each other. They have the same attitude. The same attitude. They're dealing with a different buyer and they adapt. They don't adapt to silly requirements. All right. It's a silly thing to ask for a sale of home contingency. We know that. It's silly to say if this is not approved in 30 days, I can walk away. And I've seen it. You've seen it. So tell me this. Why would a listing agent ever present such an offer? And why would you ever encourage your seller to take it? I know why you would encourage your seller to take it. Your seller's desperate. They want to move on. All right. We know that the motivations of sellers can sometimes get in the way of the best deal. But the more we can make a contract look something like this, I want an inspection, I'll do it quickly, and we'll make the adjustment necessary up front before the lender gets ankle deep or knee deep or waist deep in the approval process. I am also going to have my financing in order. I'm not going to go into this and ask for a whopping high loan-to-value ratio loan and not have an approval on hand, or I'm going to have some jackleg pre-approval letter or pre-qual letter that isn't worth the paper it's written on. And I'm going to tell the payoff lender, wait a minute, you want me to fill out a loan application? I've already got my lender. Well, why do you want me to fill out a loan application? It's not because I want to make you a loan, although fine if you do, but the reason I want to do it is that I know the value of pre-qual letters and approval letters that aren't worth the paper they're written on. I'm a lender, remember? I invented these things. I want to know that you can close. Show me your financials, which is all a loan application is, a modified financial statement. Let me know that you can get your loan. Show me. But I don't want to do that. You're not a candidate. You get the idea? You get the idea? Show me the money. Show me you're approved. Get the price fixed up front. Don't beat me up over it 30 days before closing, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. Come to me with a reasonable price. Don't bottom fish and then threaten the listing agent if they dare bring in a higher contract to compete with yours. All right? These are all the ingredients of failure that we have seen for so long. Now, the buyer then who is willing to show the lender the ability to close gets the price established early on by a prompt inspection of the property, minimizes the concessions that are demanded, builds them into the price, is willing to wait a little bit. That time is steadily decreasing to where it's not too far from being a fairly ordinary time period. Okay? These are the characteristics of the buyers who are going to be able to take advantage of that price differential. But nobody gets to take advantage of that price differential without changing some behavior. And that's the buyer that you need to cultivate. Now, what do we generally say to buyers as to short sales? So let's just examine what our attitude has been, and for many of us still is. We're not going to look at that. That's a short sale. Rethink that. At least keep an open mind about it. I think this is where a lot of money can be made. if you learn how to do this, develop the right relationships, get experts on your side, cultivate the right kind of attitude in your buyers, and appreciate that not all of the price increases you're seeing are unresponsive to the market pressures that are going to come from the bottom as more REO and short sales come on the market. And your buyers will get a pretty good picture. I think you can find a lot of business here. Any questions? Any questions about the attitude you ought to build into the short sale? By the way, let me make a warning once again. In the short sale scenario, we know that there is a prevalent attitude about better offers that come along. And this attitude is pernicious and damaging, and it can be fatal. Fannie and Freddie have made clear that if they discover that you as the listing agent have presented them an offer and have received a better offer and withheld it, and they have not authorized you to withhold that offer, you will be barred for life from participating on the listing or selling side of any deal in which the current loan is owned or insured by Fannie or Freddie, or the loan being originated is going to be bought or insured by Fannie or Freddie. Folks, that's half the deals in the country. Now, why would you not present that better offer? All right, this is one of the main pathologies of short sales. Seller has every motivation to move quickly, to avoid a foreclosure, or just wants out of a bad deal. Doesn't care what the price is. So you take the first thing that comes along, or the seller takes the first thing that comes along, and we don't utter a peep. Somehow or another, a better offer finds its way to us after the property's been on the market a little bit. Maybe our MLS, as the better thought through policies indicate, allows these things to stay in some way in front of the market. They are not shown as under contract without some rider attached saying, that basically says, yeah, but a better offer will get the deal, or at least has a good chance of getting a deal. Unlike a resale, where a better offer has just about zero chance. It just fortifies the original buyer in his resolve to close because he got a good deal. Somebody's willing to pay more. All right, so what is the remedy to that? The remedy might be in the market that we are seeing prices firm. The bottom fishers are not always going to be successful. But more likely it's going to come from our increasing awareness of the fact that it's critical we know what this house is worth in this market. It's critical. And that we counsel our sellers appropriately. The better the offer, the more likely the lender is to play ball with you. The less the tax hit if you took a cash out refi. The less the deficiency if you don't get all your debt forgiven. And it's beneficial all the way around. Now this is going to be a big thing to overcome, but let me just tell you folks, if you're in a short sale scenario, it's critical that you know from your lender up front what your lender wants you to do with subsequent offers if they should come in the door. Most lenders will say, we want to see them. And that's pretty reasonable, isn't it? Pretty easy to understand. Now I know in the foreclosure,
I'm sorry, last year, both, I had two contracts that I wanted to write that were going to be hopefully better than the existing contract.
in a short sale.
I choose two different short sales. And the agent told me, don't even bother because my lender is only negotiating one offer. They will not accept, even look at other offers until they've negotiated the existing offer. So will the new Fannie Mae guidelines, will they require lenders to accept all offers, or can they still, they said it was their protocol, their corporate protocol.
The comment is that there are lenders, that the experience was that on 2 occasions, better offers were presented to the listing agent who said, listen, under instructions from my lender, I am not, we will not deal with these. I'm to hold them, and they're dealing with them. All right, now that is...
He said don't even write them. Both times I was told not
Yeah.
to write them.
Yeah. All right. As I said, that's why you need to talk to your lender up front and find out, does your lender want to see better offers?
But Fannie Mae will not require them to
No.
entertain all offers?
As far as I know, well, now the half of the mortgages were, do you happen to know who owned the notes in these two that
One
you?
was B of A, and I can't remember the other.
One was Bank of America, but did they own the note or were they just servicing a note that had been bought by Fannie?
The agent didn't disclose that.
So we don't know whether Bank of America owned the note, and so we don't know, okay? Look, the point is, we can't know. Bank of America is still servicing all the loans generated by Countrywide, who kept the servicing of most of the loans that they generated, even though the notes were sold in the secondary market to suckers, to buyers of, who were, all right? All right, so we don't know, when you deal with Bank of America, is this one of the millions that Bank of America made and kept or securitized, or is this one that was sold straight to Fannie and Freddie? We don't know that. But we do know that Fannie and Freddie hold about half the mortgages. So some of them are in the form of mortgages, some are in the form of mortgage-backed securities. They were aggressive buyers of both. So we don't know. Point is, and I'll repeat it, and this is good evidence, you must speak to your lender to find out how you're to deal with subsequent offers. But let me warn you, if your lender says, we will deal, like HUD, on a foreclosure. Is this not the case? If HUD is in negotiations with somebody, they've reached the, quote, business deal of 150 and cash, and you're going to close in 30 days. But what's to come? There is no contract yet, as you well know. You have a 26-page addendum that would choke a horse, both if you tried to swallow it and if you tried to live by the terms, but you got no choice. But at any rate, there's a back and forth that goes on. And during that, what does HUD tell you? Hold on. I'm dealing here. But what is the difference in some cases? Through the agent, they have an idea of what that foreclosure property is worth. And so when they make a deal up front, they have either good market signals or they've tested the market in the listing period. And so they are satisfied that they are at the market or close enough that if this buyer is otherwise fine, then we're not going to start it all over again and go through all that bureaucratic hoo-ha for a few $1,000s. But what about a short sale that comes in at way below market, and then we shut the door to subsequent offers at or near the market? I don't think you're going to hear your lender say, don't show me those offers. If they're going to say, once we are in negotiation, we don't want to see any other offers, I can assure you there's going to be another part of that instruction. What is it going to be? But don't give me any stinking stupid offers and tell me that this is the market. So the whole idea here is that we establish what a reasonable market price is for this. And if I've got a price that reasonably satisfies me and I'm confident that this is at or near the market, yeah, I don't need to be dealing with the laws of 50 different states as to counteroffers and when I have an offer and the statute of frauds and all that. And it's because they deal in all 50 states and many more jurisdictions around the world that they say when I am at or near the market, fine. Now many lenders say, wait a minute, I don't know that I'm at or near the market until the market tells me, and one way I know is if I got a bunch of people who want to pay more for it than I am dealing with. Get instructions from your lender. But listen guys, the people who deal with the lenders over and over again in helping get these short sales through will be able to guide you on that. They'll give you a lot, because they'll know how the different lenders. There are thousands of lenders out there that made mortgage loans and service these loans. 1,000 different sets of instructions. And you just need to know. So as I do when I give programs just on short sales, I tell you, your first contact with that lender, if it's not through somebody that does this for you, has got to include, what are your instructions? What am I going to get from the seller? How do you want me to deal with subsequent offers? Okay, these are among the things you have to get down pat. Yes, ma'am.
The frustration on the buyer agent side is, once again, you call an agent, the listing agent, you tell them that you have an offer to present, and those agents just flat out tell you they're not going to accept your offer. They're not even going to present your offer. We live in a world of we need to present all offers. So what can we as the buyer agent do with that listing agent to get our offer?
Unfortunately, the question is that too often it happens that you call and the buyer agent not only discourages you, but flat out says, we are not going to accept your offer. We're not going to deal with your offer. Even if you give us an offer, we're not going to do anything with it. So the question is, how do you deal with it? Let me just give you a couple of thoughts. You got the regulatory and the legal side of this. Listing agents must present all offers. What if your seller says, look, I've got all the offers I want, forget all other offers. Just tell them, look, this is an instruction I've got to disregard. The law in Virginia says I present all offers. They say, fine. Send it to this post office box, and it's a dead number. Okay? They just sweep it out once a week. That's nothing we can control. The selling agent has no control over whether the buyer, the listing agent and the lender want to pay any attention to the offer. Zero control. All you can do is get there quickly with a very attractive offer on terms that are irresistible, and then hope you get the deal. Remember, you're dealing in a distressed market, and the more attractive you make your offer, the better the chance to get it. But if you come in, but if your listing agent is telling you, no, I've got a deal, I'm turning my attention to other things, and I don't want to be bothered by better offers, and the lender has not so instructed, you can write off half your business in the future if Fannie and Freddie ever find out about it. And they're not the only ones. Some of the banks feel the same way, as you can understand. Look, if you're taking a haircut, and by simply acknowledging, accepting, and giving me notice of a better offer that reduces my haircut, and you don't do it, you're never doing business with me again. And if I'm Fannie and Freddie, that's half your world. All right, now, other than that, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, but what can you do if they... you can't make... The comment is, what do you do if they just don't... I don't know how you can make them cooperate. You must put in writing to me that the seller would not... Well, so what if they don't? And they won't. And they won't. So what if they don't? What if they ignore you? The point is, we are powerless.
You always say, well, Mr. Marshall said...
Well, yeah, you can... you can quote me. You can quote me. You can tell them they run the risk of losing their business with Fannie and Freddie. You can tell them that the real estate board will hammer them into the ground like a tent peg if they find out they're not presenting offers and their seller hasn't so instructed. There are lots of things you can tell them, but you can't make them do it. I'm afraid all you can do is give them the consequences of not doing it. But that doesn't help your buyer now. My point is, this is a pathology that we must overcome. So you know what the Quakers do? They shun people that live outside their laws. All right? Let's try shunning the people that live outside our laws. Yes?
Okay, so I'm a buyer's agent, and I have presented an offer, and the bank or whomever has it, in the short sale, that it's all been presented, and everybody has agreed, and the front page says ratified. Does that mean I still have to worry about that lender changing their mind?
Yeah, question is, you have a ratified contract, and it's ratified. But what has happened? Has the lender approved the deal yet?
No. Nothing's approved until they close.
Well, you get an approval usually within 2 to 4 weeks before you close.
The lender has said yes, but if only the seller
said what? You said yes to what?
To that offer, to my offer, and the agent has signed off on it.
The lender has said yes, or the seller has said yes?
The seller has said yes, and the lender has said yes.
What do you mean? You say the lender has said yes. What do you mean? Has it been approved? Has your short sale been approved?
Yes.
All right, now you have, now the short sale lender has approved it. The contingency that the seller has is dropped. You have a binding agreement.
Okay, but then they don't have to keep presenting offers over mine. I can't, in other words...
That's between the listing agent and the lender, and I don't, depending on the lender and what level of approval and what rights the lender still has, that's going to vary from lender to lender, deal to deal. But listen, listing agents, be guided by your lender. But if your poll star is first offer, no matter how lousy, goes in and I'm blocking the door to everything else, you will send all the wrong market signals and you make this whole thing miserable for everybody. Guys, until this clears, we are never going to see the market stabilize like it needs to. We are in a healing process. Let's let it heal. And part of this process now has shifted favorably. But that means the right signals have to get to the lenders. All right, I got to move on. So let me who's had their hand up the longest? I'm going to take one more. Yes.
Okay, so same scenario, only the lender hasn't approved it. So you have a ratified contract. What do you do with contracts, other contracts that come?
Question is, you've got a ratified contract not yet approved. Let me go back and just, real simply, you must seek instructions from your lenders at the outset after I submit an offer to you that has been ratified by buyer and seller, and I send it on to you for approval. Let me ask you two questions. What should that contract look like? What do you want it to look like? In terms of, have we agreed on a reasonable price? Part of the settlement is that you're going to see more and more lenders giving us an envelope of prices that will be acceptable before the house goes on the market, which will greatly expedite things as long as appraisals work and so on. But they're going to be based on best market signals, which is why it's critical that we give good market signals. And what does the contract look like? And if I give you a contract that looks like what you want it to look like, whatever that is, price or not, if we've agreed on that or not, what does it have to look like in terms of what the buyer has asked for? What if I get another one that appears to me to be better? What do you want me to do with it? Just ask that question up front, and the lender will instruct you.
But the seller and the buyer can't, I mean, the seller has already ratified one. He can't ratify a second one, right?
Question is, can the seller ratify more than one contract? Absolutely. They're all contingent upon lender approval. They're all contingent on lender approval. Remember, that has to be in it. And therefore, only one is going to be approved by the lender. The others, the seller exercises the contingency and terminates the deal. All right?
So they don't have to be in a backup.
Well, the question is, are they in a backup? Look, backup, let's all agree on something here, guys. Backup is a relatively meaningless term in the short sale lexicon. It's relatively meaningless. If by backup you mean the same kind of document you would have, same treatment that you would have given a so-called backup in the resale market, it's meaningless. Because in the resale market, better offers that come in and are in a backup position seldom work, because now the buyer has all the motivation in the world to close. They've got signals that they've made a good deal. They drop the hard bargaining over every last little defect. They do everything they can to close their loan. They want the deal. The signals are good. But that's not the case with a short sale. Until the lender says it's soup, it ain't soup. And so that better offer has every opportunity to supplant it. All right? Even if you already have a ratified contract. It's contingent on lender approvals, just like an offer in the rest of the world. All right. Got to touch a couple of things. Now, you look. Do we have an idea here of the mentality we're trying to get into the mind? It's often, believe me, guys, harder to get it into your colleagues' minds than it is to get it into your buyers' minds, because there is so much noise and contrary attitudes about the proper way to approach these distressed properties that too many of us have. All right? Open minds about short sales and foreclosures, but remember that the buyers don't look totally different in terms of that contract. Make them as close as you can to something the lender can say yes to without wasting all the time and effort that goes into a short sale approval. All right, look, we have talked about, I'm going to let you breeze through some of the points that I make here in talking about buying a foreclosure, for example. Those of you who deal with people who buy foreclosures know good and well what the typical buyer looks like. I don't need to instruct you. But if you've got the couple that is looking to enter the market and they've now found that this is the time, and they don't want to chase prices on the houses that are out there that have multiple offers, and they think and they can wait, they're living at home or they're in an apartment and they can just keep going for a while, they want to find the right property. It happens to be a foreclosure. All right? Well, look, that market isn't closed to them, but you need to prepare them for the grim reality that the competition they face is going to be different than they face in the resale market. Very different. All right? And so it may not be for them. They need to have some money. They need to have their loan approved. They need to be able to take the property like it is, and therefore they need to find out what it's like before they get in there, into this negotiation period. They need to be able to choke down a really unacceptable set of addenda that come with this contract. You know the routine, but some buyers are willing to go that route. On the short sale, look, read through this, but just keep in mind excuse me, keep in mind the way the market is changing. And let's see if we can't goose it a little bit by at least alerting, by spreading the word about the way the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac new rules coming into effect in November are going to liberalize the process. The way the settlement with the banks, they're liberalizing the process. The way the market is giving us a signal that there's a shortage of inventory. That's what this is. But there is no shortage of inventory. It's sitting there waiting for the opportunity. It's just waiting, all right? So let your buyers know there might be an option, and then learn all you can about the proper way to craft your offers and make them attractive, and to vet your buyers. They got to be the right kind of buyer. But more buyers are than you might believe. We've talked a little bit about the new home. The main thing about the new home thing is that we are at or just past what I consider to be the inflection point on new homes. These are not going to be seeing, we're not going to be seeing the same split in that market that we have been seeing. However, to the extent that a new home inventory fits anywhere on the diagram that I drew, it's in that upper tier. It is undistressed in nature, okay? So we can expect that when prices are briskly appreciating, when we've seen the builders have enough of a cushion to be able to think about taking down more lots, and as the competition becomes pricier, and as they are buying properties that are themselves dramatically reduced in price from where they were just a few years ago, you can expect that this is going to be a level of competition for your ordinary upper tier properties that is going to act to moderate those price increases. But that's a good thing, okay? That's a good thing. Buying the new home. Here are a few things I will just tell you real quickly. The best way to have a successful deal with a new home is to use the right builder. Look, I don't know any other way to put it. In the run-up, I remember 2002 or 3, a guy up in Northern Virginia asked me to review a contract for him on a custom-built home. That contract was the most one-sided, unbelievable piece of doo-doo you have ever seen. And I just told the guy, I said, look, I'm not going to bother to mark it up. You wouldn't be able to read it for all the red ink. All I can tell you is that if you sign this, you better do it under one condition, and that is you have found out all you can about that builder, his financial strength. Go talk to a title company. If they're getting short form lien approval from the title company, that's because they've examined their financials and they know that they are not a mechanic's lien risk. And that means they got enough money to pay their bills while they construct the house. Before they get income off the sale, they can pay their subs and they can pay their suppliers. All right? Your builder needs to be reputable. Talk to people who have built with that builder. Talk to the title companies where they are approved for short form mechanics lien approval, and insist that your contract have the things that are in the Board for Contractor regulations. There are 8 or 9 things that have to be in there. And listen, this is simple, but do it anyway. It's easy to lapse into the wrong habit here. Guys, don't use the existing home resale contract and try to modify it. For heaven's sake, your builder ought to have a contract if you're the listing agent. If you're the buyer agent and your listing agent doesn't have and the builder doesn't have a contract he wants you to use, for heaven's sake, don't just reach off the shelf and grab your very first thing that comes to mind, which is this resale contract. If you do use a resale contract, you better amend it very liberally. About 80% of it doesn't work in the new sale world. It's good. We have 30 seconds left. Look, this is a much bigger issue than we have here. I've touched on 3 or 4 categories here today that each of which could be a seminar. Foreclosures, and you've attended foreclosure seminars. But look, what I want you all to appreciate and take from this, if nothing else, is that your market, and this is nationwide, your market is pretty typical of what's happening across the country. But don't miss the bigger story that you seldom read about in the papers, when all they do is quote prices in a fairly small market, okay? In a fairly small market compared to what is available for us. That's our future, guys. That is our future. It's a substantial part of how we go forward these next 3, 4, 5 years. Let's not ignore it, but let's do it right. Okay? I'll be around for questions. Thank you all. Thank you.